Honey, the food bank's on Maple. 2 blocks down. You can't be in here. She didn't look up from the register when she said it, just kept counting the float like the woman standing in front of her wasn't worth the effort of eye contact. The woman at the counter didn't move. She set her hands flat on the glass display case, patient, and said quietly, "I'd like to look at the rings, please. The ones in the second row." That made Petra Novak look up. Petra Novak, 26, white assistant manager at Callaway Jewelers on Rideau Street in Ottawa. Sharp eyeliner, acrylic nails tapping the counter, a name tag she wore tilted so customers could always see it. She had been working at Callaway for 4 years, and in that time had developed a very particular gift. She could look at a person who walked through the door and know within 8 seconds whether they were worth her time. The woman standing at the counter was, in Petra's assessment, not. She was maybe 45, South Asian, short hair with a streak of silver at the temple she hadn't bothered to dye. She wore a plain navy parka with a frayed zipper pull. Her boots were clean but cheap. No jewelry, no designer bag, just a canvas tote from the public library hanging off one shoulder. The second row, Petra repeated, the way a person repeats something a child has said that doesn't quite make sense. Yes, the woman's voice was even. The ones with the cushion-cut stones. Petra didn't move. She glanced sideways at her colleague, Darren Fuchs, 23, white, knew enough to still be uncomfortable, but experienced enough in Petra's presence to know that going against her had a cost. He was pretending to adjust a tray of bracelets near the window display. "Those start at 9,000, Petra said. Slow, deliberate. Like a warning. "I know," the woman said. "May I see them?" Petra's jaw shifted. She pulled the tray halfway out of the case, dropped it on the glass counter so that it clattered, and stepped back with her arms crossed. "There you go." The woman leaned forward and looked at the rings quietly. She didn't touch them immediately. She took her time, the way people do when they actually know what they're looking at. "The third one from the left," she said. "Can I hold it?" Petra picked it up between 2 fingers and set it down on the counter, not in the woman's hand. On the counter, a few inches away, the woman picked it up herself, turned it in the light. "What's the cut grade on this one?" Petra blinked. "It's cushion cut, I can see that." "I'm asking about the grade." Petra turned to look at the tag still attached to the ring's band, squinting slightly. She hadn't memorized it. She hadn't expected to need to. "Excellent," she said with enough confidence to cover the gap. "And the color?" A pause. "It looks more like an eye to me," the woman said, tilting the ring under the light. "Which would explain the price point. Do you have the certification card for this one?" Petra's arms uncrossed, then crossed again. "We don't keep those on the floor. That's unusual for a store at this price point," the woman said, and set the ring back on the counter. Carefully. Right in the center of the tray. She didn't seem embarrassed. She didn't seem rattled. She just looked at Petra with an expression that was not quite a smile, and not quite anything else, and waited. Darren, by the window, had stopped pretending to rearrange the bracelets. "I want to tell you something before we go any further. Because if you've ever walked into a room and felt someone decide you didn't belong there before you opened your mouth, you already know where this is going. And if you've never felt that, pay attention. Because someone in your life has. Her name was Nalini Veerapan. She was 44 years old, the daughter of Tamil immigrants who had come to Ottawa in 1983 with 2 suitcases and a letter of introduction to a community that didn't quite know what to do with them. Her father had worked the overnight shift at a textile plant for 11 years. Her mother had cleaned offices downtown every morning at 5 a.m. before anyone else arrived. Nalini had grown up watching her parents be invisible. She had spent the first half of her career making herself as visible as possible. She had a PhD in materials science from the University of Toronto, a second degree in gemology from the GIA, and a private consulting firm she had built over 15 years that advised mining companies, luxury retail chains, and estate auction houses on the valuation and authentication of precious stones. She had examined diamonds in Antwerp, emeralds in Bogota, sapphires in Bangkok, She had testified as an expert witness in 3 separate fraud trials. She had been quoted in the Globe and Mail 4 times in the past 2 years alone. She was also, on this particular Thursday morning in November, wearing her library parka because she had driven straight from her daughter's school drop-off and had not gone home to change. She was in Callaway Fine Jewelers because Callaway Fine Jewelers was a client. She had been retained 6 weeks earlier by the company's founder, Gerald Callaway, to conduct a full authentication audit of their Ottawa flagship location's estate and premium inventory. Someone had flagged inconsistencies in several appraisal records. Gerald suspected the problem was internal. He had asked Nalini to come in undercover as an ordinary customer to observe how the floor staff handled product knowledge and certificate documentation. He had not told the floor staff she was coming. He had not told the floor staff about the audit at all. He was, at that moment, watching a live video feed from the store's security system on a laptop in his car, parked half a block down Rideau Street. Nalini asked to see 2 more pieces, a vintage sapphire pendant and a channel set tennis bracelet from the estate collection. Petra retrieved both with the same performance, a little too slow, a little too loud when she set things down, answering every technical question with something that was either vague or slightly wrong. Then the front door opened. A couple came in. Late 30s, white, well-dressed, the kind of people who looked like they had a reason to be in a fine jewelry store. The man had a wool coat, the woman's boots had red soles. Darren looked at them, then looked at Petra. Petra had already moved. She left Nalini standing at the counter with the estate tray in front of her and walked the length of the floor with a smile Nalini had not seen once in the past 12 minutes. "Welcome to Callaway. Looking for something special today?" The couple lit up. They were shopping for an anniversary gift. Petra pulled out 3 trays immediately. She used words like heirloom quality and truly exceptional clarity, and this one was from a private collection in Montreal. She brought out a loupe without being asked. She offered them water. Nalini watched. She had been left alone at the counter with an open estate tray and no staff member within 3 meters of her. She slid her phone from her pocket. She opened the Notes app and typed, quietly and without hurrying, "Estate tray unattended. No supervision of customer with open inventory. Floor staff repositioned to serve preferred demographic. 11:17 a.m." She already had 14 similar notes from the past 12 minutes. She was reaching to pick up the sapphire pendant again when Darren appeared at her elbow. He hadn't been sent over. He'd come on his own. "I'm sorry about the wait," he said, voice low. "Can I answer any questions?" Nalini looked at him. He had the face of someone who knew something was wrong and didn't know what to do with that knowledge yet. "Yes," she said, "the sapphire. Can you tell me the origin? I can get the record card for you. It should have the spectrographic report." He paused. "If it doesn't, that would be a problem. We're supposed to have those for everything in the estate collection." "Yes," Nalini said. "You are." He got the card. The spectrographic report was missing. In its place was a photocopy of a document that, on closer inspection, had a formatting inconsistency on the lab header that Nalini had seen before. In a fraud case 3 years ago involving misrepresented Sri Lankan sapphires moving through a dealer in Montreal. She photographed the card quietly. Petra, across the floor, was laughing at something the man in the wool coat had said. Darren watched her from the corner of his eye. "She knows the records are missing," he said. "Not a question. I raised it 2 months ago. She told me it wasn't my concern." Nalini placed the pendant back on the velvet tray. "Did you document that conversation?" He blinked. "I sent an email to my manager. To her." She never replied. "Do you still have it?" "I think so." "Yes." Nalini looked at him steadily. "Keep it." She picked up the canvas tote from the floor. She thanked Darren by name. She walked to the door. Petra saw her leaving and turned back to the couple without a second glance. The bell above the door chimed as Nalini stepped out into the November cold. Gerald Callaway was waiting for her in the car. He was 61. A heavy-set man with the kind of steady expression that came from decades of negotiating without flinching. He had started Callaway in 1991 with a single display case rented inside a pawn shop on Bank Street. He had 3 locations now. He was not the kind of man who missed things twice. Petra, he said, before Nalini even had the door closed. Yes, how bad? Nalini opened her notes. She told him about the certification gaps, the sapphire document irregularity, the unattended estate tray, the deflected questions, the selective service. She read the timestamps. Gerald was quiet for a long moment. Then, the authentication records. How many pieces are potentially affected? I'll need access to the full inventory system to confirm, but based on today and the appraisal inconsistencies you flagged before I came in, I'd estimate between 12 and 18 pieces in the estate collection alone. What's the exposure? If those sapphires are misrepresented Sri Lankan stones sold as Burmese, you're looking at misrepresentation of value, potentially fraud, depending on what the documentation trail looks like. She paused. You could also be looking at a liability issue with pieces that have already been sold. Gerald set both hands on the steering wheel. He didn't grip it. He just let them rest there, like a man steadying himself before something he'd already decided. What do you need from me? Full access to the back office records, staff emails from the past 18 months, every appraisal file in the estate collection. You'll have it by tomorrow morning. He started the car, then he stopped. The young man on the floor, the one who came over to you, Darren Fuchs, he's been there 8 months. I barely know his name. Gerald looked out the windshield. That tells me something about who's been running that floor. What happened over the next 3 weeks was methodical and quiet. That's how real accountability works. Not a single explosion, not a made-for-TV moment. Just paperwork, phone calls, and the slow dismantling of something that should never have been built. Nalini worked through Callaway's estate inventory with 2 colleagues from her firm. They pulled certification cards, cross-referenced them with GIA and AGL databases, requested original laboratory reports where documentation had been replaced with copies. They found 11 pieces with authentication issues. 7 were misrepresented for origin. 2 had inflated clarity grades on the store's own internal appraisal documents, documents that had been used to justify sale prices and insurance valuations to customers. 2 more had certification cards from a laboratory that Nalini's firm confirmed had been flagged by industry regulators in 2021 for issuing fraudulent reports. 6 customers had purchased those pieces. Gerald contacted each of them personally. He offered full refunds, no questions, no legal pressure required. 3 accepted immediately. 2 requested replacement pieces of verified quality. 1, a woman who had bought a sapphire ring as an engagement gift for her daughter, cried on the phone. Gerald stayed on the call for 40 minutes. The emails Darren Fuchs had saved, including the one Petra had never replied to, became part of the internal file. Darren had flagged the missing spectrographic report on the estate sapphires not once but twice. The second time, he had CC'd the store's general inbox. That email had been deleted from the general inbox without a response. Deleted by Petra, whose access logs were subpoenaed as part of the subsequent investigation. Petra Novak was dismissed from Callaway Fine Jewelers on a Tuesday afternoon. Gerald did it himself, in his office, with the company's legal counsel present. He read her the specific grounds: falsification of inventory documentation, deletion of internal compliance correspondence, and a pattern of discriminatory service conduct documented across multiple incidents captured on the store's own security footage. She tried to argue. She said the authentication records had always been managed that way. She said she hadn't known the laboratory was flagged. She said the footage didn't show what they thought it showed. Gerald laid 3 timestamped screenshots on the desk, the same ones his legal team had pulled. Petra stopped arguing. She left with a cardboard box that held a coffee mug, a phone charger, and a set of eyeliner pencils from her desk drawer. The security guard held the door. 2 weeks later, A formal complaint was filed with the Jewelers Vigilance Canada and a separate complaint with the Ontario Consumer Protection Authority regarding the misrepresented stones and documentation practices. Gerald cooperated fully with both. The investigation into the flagged laboratory was referred to the broader industry body and ultimately resulted in a regulatory review that affected 4 other retailers who had used the same supplier. Gerald also restructured the authentication compliance protocols across all 3 Callaway locations. Every estate piece required a primary laboratory certificate and a secondary verification on file before it could be listed for sale. Every certificate had to be cross-checked against the relevant database before the listing was confirmed. The new compliance checklist had 42 items on it. Gerald had written 20 of them himself at his kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night, and Darren Fuchs, who had sent those emails and saved them and been quiet about them for 2 months, and then, when the moment came, had walked across that floor without being asked, was promoted to floor massager of the Rideau Street location. Gerald called him at home to tell him. It was a Thursday evening, same day of the week Nalini had first walked through the door. Darren picked up on the second ring. He didn't say much. He said, "I didn't do anything that big." Gerald said, "You did the right thing when it was inconvenient. That's the only kind of right thing that counts." Nalini went back to the store one more time, not for work. On a Saturday in December, she came in through the front door in the same navy parka, the same library tote, the same boots. Darren was behind the counter. He looked up, and his face did the thing that faces do when a memory lands fast. Quick recognition, a beat of pause, and then a smile that reached all the way up. "Dr. Veerapan," he said, "can I help you find something?" She had come in to look at a pair of earrings, aquamarines in a simple bezel setting, for her mother's birthday. She told him what she was looking for. He pulled 2 trays and asked the right questions. Style preference, metal tone, whether her mother wore her hair up or down, because that changed how the light would catch a drop versus a stud. They took 20 minutes. They found the right pair. When Nalini was leaving, an older woman came through the door. 70, maybe 75. White hair pinned back, wearing a quilted vest and rubber-soled shoes, the kind seniors wear when their joints don't forgive cold floors. She walked slowly, and she clutched her purse with both hands, and she had the look of someone who wasn't sure she was allowed to take up the space she was taking up. She stopped just inside the door. Darren was already moving. "Good morning. Come on in. Can I get you something warm to drink while you look around?" The woman's face opened up like a window. "Oh, I don't want to bother." "You're not bothering anyone," Darren said. He came around the counter and walked her to a stool by the display case without making it feel like assistance. "Just like company. We've got coffee or tea. What do you like?" She liked tea. She was looking for a gift for her granddaughter's engagement. She had a budget she named quietly, a number that was less than the cheapest tray on the estate display, and she said it like she was apologizing. Darren didn't flinch. He said, "Perfect. I know exactly what section to start in." Nalini stood near the door and watched for a moment before she left. I think about Darren Fuchs a lot when I think about this story, because it's easy to talk about Nalini, the expert who walked in and knew what she was looking at, the person with credentials and a quiet kind of power that made the whole situation right itself in the end. That's a satisfying story. It follows the shape we like, but the part that stays with me is Darren, 8 months into a job, watching something wrong happen every day and not knowing who was listening. Sending emails that disappeared. Filing nothing away because nothing had ever seemed to come from filing things away. And then, on a Thursday morning, when a woman in a library parka asked about color grades, he walked across the floor anyway. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know an audit was happening. He didn't know his email was going to matter. He just thought something was wrong and he did something small about it. That's the piece people never put in the story. The Darrens. The people who do the right thing before they know there's any reason to. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever seen something wrong at work Something you reported, or wanted to report, or were too scared to report. And what happened? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I mean it. If this story hit you somewhere real, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're not subscribed to DELL STORIES yet, now's the time. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. The people who dismiss you based on what you're wearing, or what you look like, or what neighborhood they've already decided you're from, they're not making a judgment about you. They're making a confession about themselves, every single time. Treat people like they matter. Every person, every room, whether you think anyone is watching or not, because someone is always watching. And sometimes it's exactly the person you needed it to be.